Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva bandhuscha sakha tvameva Tvameva vedyat navinam Tvameva Tvameva sarvam mama deva deva Tvameva sarvam mama deva deva. Jai. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So where are we in our text?
307.
307.
Yes.
And what's the heading that we're in right now?
Condemnation of the ego.
Yes. All right. Will you help us out, please?
Tasmadahankara imam shvashatrum bhoktar gale kanta kavat pratitam vichidya vijnanam hasena sputam bhungshvatma samarajya sukham yatheshtam. Therefore, with the great sword of realization, destroying this ego sense, your enemy, which is like a thorn in the throat of a man who is eating, enjoy directly and freely the bliss of your own domain, the majesty of the Atman.
So he's summing up much of this discussion with this idea. How do we destroy the ego? Now, I'm just quite taken with the Saint Vidyaranya's description that we had Monday night. So he talks about this agent in the subtle intellect. He calls it Chid Abhasa. Abhasa means reflection. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. So the reflection of consciousness. So when that Chid Abhasa thinks, I am the body, I am the subtle body, my thoughts and feelings, even I'm the transmigrating soul, or this is my astrology. Or in the now, I'm a successful person, I didn't do so well, or I'm sick, or I'm not getting what I want. This is what makes that Chidabhasa, that function in the intellect, suffer. But when that Chidabhasa rediscovers its essential nature, its substrata, which is pure consciousness, which is never touched by the body or the feelings, feelings or the thoughts. Now listen carefully. Remember, the self does not get realized. Or we can say the self is always realized. That's what Meher Baba used to say. Everybody's already realized. Because the only real knowledge from the standpoint of the absolute is self-evidence of the self. How do you know you are you? You don't see, hear, taste, touch, smell, emote, or think yourself, and you know you are. But the great cosmic joke is you've always had that. Well, what's my problem? My problem is in the subtle intellect, this chid abhasa. When it thinks I'm the body plus the personality, then all the 6 waves of sorrow, as the scriptures call it, afflict us. And the root of it all, the chief one of them, is kama, craving. I want. I'm not happy because I'm not getting what I want. When that Chidabhasa rediscovers through direct experience, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not the thoughts. I'm that ground of being, that Chidakasha, space of pure awareness. Or as Vidyaranya calls it, Kutastha, still and established like a moment. It's never done. That Chidabhasa gets transformed. What's the difference between a realized person and a miserable creature? Not the self. Self and Ravana Maharshi, self and Adolf Hitler, they were contemporaries. It's the same. What was different was their minds. So what happens when this Chidabhasa, this reflection of consciousness in the subtle intellect, sees the fundamental unreality of the mind itself? The mind quits believing itself. When the mind tries to throw up a personal sense of self, we practice. No personal sense of self is real. Drop it. When the mind is caught in the throes of spriha, longing, then it suddenly goes, drop it. The mind come home. And in time, either through a very profound experience of nirvikalpa samadhi or through abhyasa, the mind quits throwing up those ego thoughts. This is what we call sthita prajna, steady wisdom. Or Shankara called it in the beginning of the book, a full knower of the Supreme. Never forget how proud to be. Not a person anymore, never really was. thoughts. Those thoughts. Any questions about this? All right, next verse.
ततो हमादे विनिर्वत् वृत्तम् सन्त्यक्तराग परमार्थलाभात् तूष्णीं समास्वात्म सुखानुभूत्या पूर्णात्मना ब्रह्मणि निर्विकल्पः. Checking the activities of the ego and renouncing all attachments through the experience of the Supreme Reality, be free from duality through the enjoyment of the bliss of the Self and remain serene in Brahman, for then you have attained your infinite nature.
So he uses the term nirvikalpa. Now, my Sanskrit isn't good enough. What's he translating here as nirvikalpa? The bliss of your own nature, or is it checking the mind? Can you figure it out for us?
This infinite nature.
Yes. So, whenever we hear the term nirvikalpa, we have to understand that there are two ways of translating this or explaining it. The first, it is the mind state of the ending of the mind. When all the vasanas have been renounced, all our attachments, all our identifications, the mind thunders to a stop. All the veil of ignorance gone. And you read in so many scriptures, so and so lapsed into samadhi for a muhurta, 48 minutes, or longer, or shorter. I think one scripture says it only needs to be 7 seconds long. A timeless state. Then when the mind returns from it, it's absolutely sure, I'm not a person, never really was a person. I'm the ground of being. Now, the definition of nirvikalpa is when the distinction between knower, knowing, and known is merged. But nirvikalpa is also another name for the self. How do you know you are you? Who's the knower? Me. What's the means of knowledge? Me. What's that which is known? Me. So in Shankara's famous hymn, Nirvana Shatakam, one of the stanzas begins, Aham nirvikalpo, which means I am nirvikalpa. Now, it is my opinion that it can be a trap to make nirvikalpa samadhi a new spiritual goal. And you start jonesing after it, it becomes another thing, and then that in and of itself keeps the mind active because it's struggling so hard. It's like trying to step on the head of your shadow. faster I run, the damn thing keeps getting further away. So forget, in a sense, nirvikalpa samadhi. Be aware of it, but stay focused on, do I know who I am? Because the fruit of nirvikalpa is self-knowledge. Now, for very subtle minds, it may just be a little shift. Or you may have extended periods where there's no person there. Just the direct perception. Words fail us. But earlier on, Shankara said, it is the annihilation of vasanas here and now. Let's consider liberation by the wings. How do I know that vasana is still operative in my mind? This is very important. What's the answer?
I think I'm a person.
Yes. Because what's the first power of a vasana? Veiling power. The non-apprehension of myself is Brahman. I forget that I am Brahman. And then immediately that Chidabhasa thinks I'm the body or I'm the personality. I'm the person. And if you think you're a person struggling for nirvikalpa, so have no relationship with the ego, with a personal sense of self. Cast it aside. Now, that doesn't mean we need to talk funny. This body is going to the store. This body chopped up strawberries. This mind liked the flavor of them. You don't need to talk funny. I mean, I used to freak out. I mean, I was so literalistic. Some as you would say, pass me the chutney. You know? You don't have to talk funny. It's your knowledge. What is nirvikalpa samadhi? The mind can be described in Tripura Rahasyam, it's described this way, as two elements. Prakasha, light awareness, and vimarsha, which means deliberation, the thoughting of any kind. Thinking about stuff, feeling about this, remembering that, planning this, etc. That's what the mind is. If we remove the vimarsha, even for a moment, it's technically nirvikalpa samadhi. So that scripture talks a lot about what it calls fleeting samadhis. Throughout the day, there are times when the mind is momentarily free from thought. But it does not serve to liberate us because we're not attentive. We don't notice. What were you thinking, Wendy? Oh, spaced out. I don't know. Doesn't do anything to free us. So part of the process is the attentive faculty has to be turned inward to notice disappearance of the mind. And its return. Nothing there. What I was it that got it? Chidavasa. That's the subtle intellect. This is called pratyabhignana, recognition of my true nature. If this seemed obscure and too obtuse for you, just put this on the shelf. Some of you, this is right where you are in your sadhana. For others, we'll teach Vivekachudamani again, don't worry. Any thoughts? Was this useful? Hopefully.
Yeah.
And once you can get to the point where you can watch that ego sense rise and fall, you can see it for what it is. If you can see it for what it is, it's obviously not you. Next verse.
Samulakritopi mahanam punaha vyolekhitashyadi chetasashanam sajjavya vikshepa shatam karoti nabhasvata pravishivari doyatha. Even though completely rooted out, this terrible ego sense, if revived in the mind, Vyolekkhita, even for a moment, returns to life and creates hundreds of mischiefs, like a cloud ushered in by the wind during the rainy season.
Yes. So, you may think, mind's tuned up, being mindful all the time. I let go of this ego sense. And then something triggers us. Actually, that sort of a trigger is not so problematic. Because then you go, oh God. Where it really becomes problematic, listen carefully. In the end, there are no rules for the woman or the man of knowledge. The jnani puts the robot on automatic pilot. Just let it act in the world. But if you indiscriminately revel with the objects of the senses and enjoy, and then have chintya, oh, that was so wonderful. I want to do it again and again and again. And we're sloppy, inattentive. Then the ego gets nice and thick and fat. We're not too aware of it until whatever that object or that person or that situation is, it's taken away. So Shankara's message here is there's nothing wrong with enjoyment. The problem is attachment. Enjoy. But when the event is over, Let your life be a perpetual series of the now. It's gone. Now. It's gone. Now. We don't grab. We don't have that after the fact rumination over an experience. Is joy giving or misery producing? And it won't leave asana, and ego will not reform. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
New section, section 57. Actions, thoughts, and vasanas renounce. Nigrihya shatro ramo vakasha kvachinnadeyo vishayanu chintya sa eva sajjivan heturyasya prakshina jambira tarori vambu. Having once overpowered this enemy, the ego, not a single moment's rest should be given to it to ruminate over sense objects. That is verily the cause of its returning to life, just like water is the cause for the flowering of a citron tree that has dried up before.
So the image here is some sort of a citrus plant. I don't know what a citron tree is, but the idea is in the dry season, it looks dead. It looks like just dead twigs. But then when the rainy season comes, no, it's not dead. It's just in a dormant stage. And when the rains come the flowers and everything all over again, the leaves and stuff. So the term he used, he translated as ruminate. The term in the Sanskrit that he used was chintya. Chintya, again, in Hindi means worry, but in Sanskrit, it means after the fact rumination, thinking about some completed action, either that brought me positive joy or negative misery. That's the cause. There's a wonderful story in Yoga Vasishta. And I think the demon king is Prahlada. And as is always going on, there's a war in heaven between the Devas and the Asuras. That's what keeps everything going on in the world. So Prahlad, the king of the demons, decides to create 3 super demons. They have no ego. Because they have no ego, they have no fear. So as they do battle with the Devas, they're beating the crap out of them. So the Devas don't know what to do. So do they go to Brahma or Vishnu first? Do you remember?
I think they go to Shiva.
Shiva the first time. I think Shiva comes down.
Oh, right. Yeah. First time is Brahma and Vishnu.
It's either Brahma or Vishnu. They go to one of the gods. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And they say, here's your strategy. Engage those super demons in battle. Then feign defeat and run away. And do it again and again. So they charge into the super demons. Ah, you're so powerful. You're going to beat the crap out of us. Run. They do it again. Yeah. And what happened to the super demons? They began to have chintya. than us. We just whooped those devas' butts. Let's go get a beer. Talk about how wonderful we are. And because they engaged in chintya, ego developed. And as soon as ego developed, they had bhaya, fear. And the devas could defeat them. Wow. So Prahlad says, well, creates 3 more super demons. He creates them without ego, but he also creates them as Shrotriyam. What does Shrotriyam mean?
Well versed in the scriptures.
Well versed in the scriptures. Listen carefully. Meaning they had the tools to keep ego from arising again. Do you understand that? So, charging off Terminator 2, Super Demon 2. They attack the Devas. The Devas try the same trick. Oh, you defeated us. Oh, you defeated us. And the super demons, if egoism started to rise in Chintya, they go, pow. I am the space of consciousness, and I beat up devas. They couldn't be defeated. So the devas, they were at a loss at this point. They run off to Lord Shiva. What are we going to do? Lord Shiva says, there's nothing you can do. I will have to solve this. So he comes down with his mace or his discus. I can't remember.
He has a trident.
Trident. Anyway, he kills them. And they were liberated. They achieved moksha. These super demons. But the moral of the story, the point of the story, is we need to have jnanam vijnanam cha. This is how Gita describes it. Wisdom coupled with deep understanding. So we can be attentive to the mind. If these ideas of I-ness and mine-ness start to arise, we see them for what they are. And we can drop them. If we see the mind engaging and after the fact, thinking, ruminating, oh, that was so wonderful, I want to do that again. Oh, that was terrible, I'll never speak to that person again. We see it for what it is. Oh, Om Namah Shivaya. It's one of my favorite stories, if I could only remember the characters that arrive. But you get the idea. So this is the practice. This is the methodology that the tradition gives us. Now, again, this is teaching for those who are in what I call the yo-yo state. Sometimes I'm very clear that I am that space of consciousness, but at other times I get all identified again. How do I move from that yo-yo state into sthita prajna, steady wisdom? This is not Jim's ideas. This is what the scriptures suggest. Any thoughts on this?
So I suppose the danger of chintya has to be completely seen.
See it for what it is. It's indulgence is what it is. It's ego's, one. You're living in a fantasy, basically. Because even the enjoyable experience, it's not here. You're having an affair with it in your mind. Does that make sense? That's, again, back to one of Swamiji's most powerful teachings. Put your mind where your hands are working. That'll keep chintya from happening. All right, next one.
Jim, one more question.
Yes.
Is there a difference between ruminating and reflecting after the fact?
Well,
one can be positive still, right?
For example, let's say you give a presentation at work, and afterward you get some loving and helpful feedback. Oh, you had a lot of what they call voiced pauses. Yeah, when we say those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Most people who are not practiced public speakers do that.
Mm-hmm.
And someone says, you ought to work on that. Okay. That kind of stuff is just fine. It's not problematic. But if you go give a presentation at work and it's very successful, and then for the next part of the day, you're going, oh, that went so well. Oh, I feel so good about that. Finally, I was able to get so such. You come home, you tell your husband about, oh, today I gave this presentation at work and it went so well, and yada, 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 yada. And we think it's so innocent.
Mm-hmm.
Or something terrible happens. I just need to vent. I had a student for a while, and it was just indulgence. It was a way to dress up self-pity. Let me give you a litany of all that's gone wrong today and how angry and hurt I am. Well, it's just being healthy. I'm just venting. And I just vomit on people when I do that. Now, the psychologist may tell you that that's healthy. It's probably healthier than stuffing. But you're at a different place now in your yoga. Any thoughts on this? Is that useful?
Yes. Thank you.
All right, next verse.
देहात्मना संस्थित एव कामे विलक्षण कामयिता कथं स्यात् अतोऽर्थसन्धान परत्वमेव भेद प्रसत्या भवबन्ध हेतुः. He alone who has identified himself with the body is greedy of sense pleasures. How can one devoid of the body idea be greedy? Hence, the tendency to ruminate over sense objects is indeed the cause for the bondage of becoming and the idea of distinction or duality.
Yes. So the bija vasana, the seed attachment, is deha vasana. I think I'm the body. And when I'm looking for sense pleasures, ruminating over it, planning for it. If you want steady wisdom, take your mind out of the future. Be in the now. And again, it doesn't mean we don't make appropriate plans at work. If you've got a release of a particular program for customers, I have a friend who's a release engineer. Not sure what they do. What does a release engineer do?
It's when you are releasing a new version of the software and you have to, it's called a release. You deploy it to the computers where the new version is going to be installed.
But he's the last guy to go through it. All the other engineers are working on the program.
Right.
And then he's the one who, in many ways, interfaces with the customer. But obviously, with a job like that, there needs to be planning, there needs to be communication, there needs to be a schedule. We all have things like that in life. You've got deadlines you have to meet for budgeting and stuff like that, and grant writing. When you were back in the restaurant business, how much prep did you have to do before you opened for dinner?
A lot.
Yeah.
But it's interesting as we're talking about, I remember how often I would think about things that I like to think about with the restaurant, my favorite parts, to escape everything else. Like I would think about menus because I loved that. And anytime I wanted to describe, I would go to that. Or thinking about my next vacation. Like I was always living in the future because I didn't like the present.
The word vacation is very interesting. I need to vacate my life. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And that's what I did all the time. I was always thinking about my next vacation. Yeah. That's interesting.
Little bit of it, you could burn it up, bring your mind back. But frankly, it's dangerous. Shankara will use another metaphor. I don't know if we've come to it yet here. Normally we say you'll mistake a rope for a snake. Then he says you mistake a snake for a rope. I think it's just a harmless rope. Indiscriminate revelry with the objects of the senses. But it's a snake that's going to bite me with the poison attachment. And again, I think this is what's been useful to me. Bring it back to this axiom. If I'm disturbed, no matter the cause, I'm the one with the klesha. I'm the one with the affliction. I'm the one with the dosha. And that's always attachment, expectation, identification. Now listen carefully. That doesn't mean the world and its people are not oftentimes quite wrong. People cheat. People dump their anger on us. People personalize their own issues and project. Happens all the time. Not to mention the economy does this. The Kaiser people won't schedule you for another 3 months. All sorts of things. But if I get disturbed, I have to go. As long as I stay with that axiom, then I can deal with it. I can see what it is. As soon as my mind says they did it to me, They made me angry. Nobody has the power to make us feel anything, either positive or negative. I'm so upset, and they did it. Oh, I'm so happy. They make me happy. Both are lies. It's so mechanical. When the situation is conducive, the mind is happy. When the situation is non-conducive, the mind is unhappy. It's mechanical and repetitive. Don't pay it a lot of attention. Your peace comes from being independent of this world. Let the world just go by. Next verse.
कार्य प्रवर्धना बीज प्रविद्धि परिदृश्यते कार्यनाशा कार्यनाशादि बीजानाश तस्मात् कार्यं निरोधयेत्. When the effects are flourishing, the seeds are also observed to increase. When the effects are destroyed, the seeds are also destroyed. Therefore, the effect must be subdued.
So the effect of my vasana is desire and the compulsion to dance with the objects in an addictive way. The seed of that, of course, is the vasana. But I can work on the seed, koham, who am I am that partless Brahman. Or I can work on the effect, let go of attachment, expectation, identification. Diminish the effects, the seeds wither as well. Until the mind is convinced. Chidananda Rupaha. My nature is bliss consciousness. That's the pearl of great price. That's the peace that passes all understanding. That's my kingdom is not of this world. That's the Chintamani, the wish-fulfilling gem. Then we begin to see the world for what it is. Trinkets and baubles, pieces of colored glass, full of joy. It's just too little, that's all. The more we're able to renounce, the easier it is to revel in our own self-nature. Next one.
वासना वृद्धित कार्यं कार्य वृद्धया च वासना वर्धते सर्वथा पुंसा sansaro na vivartate. Through the increase of vasanas, egocentric work increases, and when there is an increase of egocentric work, then there is an increase of vasanas also. Thus man's transmigration never comes to an end.
Yes. So, vasanas. How do I know I'm having vasana pressure? Well, first, of course, I feel like a person. But then there is being restless and discontent, which then impels me into egocentric action. Egocentric action is, I need to do this in order to be okay. And the mind will present all sorts of things at gross levels. If I move to Chicago, it'll be better. If I get a different house, it'll be better. If I get a spouse, it'll be better. If I get rid of the spouse, it'll be better. Children, that's what's going to do it. It'll be so much better with children. And they seem so real. No blame. This is the Lord's Maya. It's how the Lord keeps the whole Mishigas going. But the more ego-prompted activity that we do, firmer the Vasana bundle gets, which increases my discontent. And I give you this wonderful example of this. So I was talking with a friend who, crystal meth addict, he'd had another relapse. I said, well, what was going on? He said, Jim, I just needed some relief. Now, I'm so glad he was honest. But what does that say? The just ordinary daily mind was uncomfortable. And he just couldn't take it anymore. He needed some relief. What is that ordinary state of mind that's so uncomfortable? Vasana, pressure. All it is. And if we keep dealing with it, it's like having a fire, thinking if I pour oil on the fire, that's going to quench the fire. What happens when you pour oil on the fire? It gets bigger. Keep feeding the beast. And if you've had an afflicting habit of any kind, and you've been able to let it go, what happens afterward? Do you feel bad because you don't have your habit anymore?
It's a huge relief.
Yeah. Who here has been a smoker and given it up? Yeah. You know, did you like being tyrannized by smoking? I didn't. I smoked 2.5 packs of Marlboros a day. It was awful. Luckily, I was a singer and I developed the yoga ball. This is long before. I did this New Year's Eve between 69 and 70. You know how I did it? I hung a pacifier around my neck. I'm not making this up, but every time I wanted a cigarette, people thought I was nuts. But when you quit smoking, didn't you feel a lot better?
Mm-hmm.
That's our direct experience. When the tyranny of craving goes away. Now, what doesn't work is getting rid of the objects and the desire remains behind. That becomes very problematic. Krishna addresses it in Gita. He says the person who gets rid of the objects of desire but allows the desire to remain behind is verily a hypocrite. And eventually you're going to go out and go after that object again. But then he goes on and says, but their desire leaves them on seeing the supreme. So it's not just renunciation of the world. It's then being satisfied in the self, by the self, the full knower of the supreme and who's retired into the supreme. Wendy, can I share a little bit about what you said before class?
Sure.
So, Wendy, how long did you meditate today?
For 3 hours.
Yeah. And what's starting to happen in your daily life as a result of, you've been putting at least a couple hours a day, haven't you?
Yeah. Just everything's a lot quieter. The world is just stiller, not as bouncy.
The world hasn't changed a bit.
Hmm.
You have changed. Not the self. Your mind has changed.
Yeah.
The world still is the world. That makes sense?
Yeah.
But there it is. There is the real life demonstration of the fruits of this work. All right, next one. I'm going to ask that of somebody. Can I share this? And they'll go, no. I've had them go, all right. Squirm a bit. What the heck have we got to reveal? Go ahead.
Sansara bandha vichitta yaita vayam pradahedhyatihi vasana vriddhiretabhyam chintaya kriyaya vahihi. In order to snap the chain of transmigration, one should burn to ashes these two, for thinking of sense objects and doing selfish action lead to increase of vasanas.
Yes. So we we fulfill our role in the world. Do your duty. Wherever you are right now. Act as expression. Act as creativity. I had a student at one point who was studying taiko drumming. I love what he said. And he said that his taiko master said you have to practice taiko drumming until you can drum like a child. You think of a kid, like a 4-year-old, pulling the pots and pans out, banging on them with their spoons. Have you ever seen kids do that? It's work, but it's not ego prompted work. I'll be happy when, it'll be better if, will they like me? I'm going to get more money. I'm going to be on top of the pile. My friends are going to say, oh, I'm an important person because I have this, that, or the other thing. These are the drives of ego. Money, property, prestige, affection, the esteem of others. So the yogi makes their life a work of art. We strive for excellence, just the way a painter paints a picture. My life is to work alone, never to its fruits. and enjoy the journey. It's full of intense, immediate bliss. You've got no ego agenda going with it. Swamiji used to laugh all the time. He found life very funny, and he certainly found us very funny. He was intense and immediate, no self-censorship. Liberated personality, marvelous to watch. So give up the notion that cash and prizes are going to make it better. And that if I work hard for stuff, it's going to make it better. Don't believe me. Look to your direct experience. Many of you have quite a bit of stuff now. But as long as there's that ego drive, they're suffering. All right, next one.
ताभ्यां प्रवधर्माणा सासूते संसृति आत्मनः त्रयाणां च क्षयोपाय सर्वावस्थासु सर्वदा सर्वत्र सर्वतः सर्व ब्रह्मात्रावलोकनैः सद्भाव वासनादाढ यात्र त्रयं लयं यातत्र त्रयं लयं श्रुतु. Augmented by these two, the vasanas produce one's transmigration. These three, however, are destroyed by looking upon everything under all circumstances, always, everywhere, and in all respects as Brahman and Brahman alone. Through the strengthening of the longing to be one with Brahman, those three will be annihilated.
Yes. So the seeds, the vasanas, the ego-prompted activity, and then the subsequent transmigration. And again, that doesn't mean going from this body to another body. You can look at it that way. It means I go from this experience and then I look for a new experience, and that isn't working out. So different relationships, different environments, different jobs, etc. Don't worry, these things will happen. Your karma will put you here and there. That's the inevitability. You know, businesses go broke and you got to get another job. But give up this idea. The cause of my memory is misery is out there. And here what he's saying is, remember, you are Chidananda Rupam. My form, my nature is bliss consciousness. Remember what this world is. Brahma Satyam Jagan Nitya. Names and forms are illusory. What's really there is Brahman alone. It's all just a play of consciousness. Don't sweat the small stuff. It's all small stuff. Easy. Jesus talked about it. He said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So taking on this way of life makes things easy. Drop the rock. Oh, that false burden so many of us run around with. Actually, it's Isaiah, isn't it? Right. His yoke is easy and his burden is light. It's not something Jesus said.
I think Jesus said it as well. Probably quoting Isaiah.
All right, going on.
क्रियनाशे भवेत् चिन्ता नाशोऽस्माद्वा स नाक्षयः वासना प्रक्षयो मोक्ष सा जीवन्मुक्तिरिष्यते. With the end of selfish actions, brooding over sense object ends, which is followed by destruction of vasanas. The destruction of vasanas is liberation, and this is considered as liberation in life.
So that's what we are to do. Let it go, let it go, let it go. Let go and keep your heart open. Let go and keep your heart open. Guide the horse in the direction it's going in life. And again, the world is not bad. Oh, the horrible world, we're doomed. Terrible, terrible this, terrible, terrible that. It goes through its cycles. The names and forms are shunyata. They're fundamentally void. Everything will pass. Everything will change. Everybody dies. I promise you, both Biden and Trump will be dead in 20 years. We don't have to worry. We don't have to worry. It's Leela. Okay, what verse we on for next week?
318.
318. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.